welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to do a complete UniFi setup. And it's going to be for a small office, maybe a home office, medium-sized office. And what we're going to do is we are going to use the next-gen gateway. So no surprises. Ubiquiti did send this to me. Thank you for that. The other thing that we're going to use is a CloudKey. We always recommend that you host your own UniFi first, whether it's on a CloudKey or whether it is, you know, on a virtual machine, a Windows box or whatever. We do recommend that you always host it first. So we're going to use this. This is mine. I did buy this one when these were available. Then the other thing that we're going to use, and this is something else that I also bought, was the U6 Enterprise. So this is Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, and it does have a 2.5 gig port. Now, something else that I bought is this Enterprise 8 PoE switch. It has 2.5 gig ports, 10 gig SFP plus ports, and so we are going to use this as our switch. Now, if you weren't using an access point that had a 2.5 gig port, you could probably get away with the tried and true UniFi 8-150. Probably between this and the Edge switch version of this, probably my most favorite Ubiquiti switch, to be honest with you. You know, they're fanless. You can mount them anywhere, shove them anywhere. Passive PoE or PoE Plus. Just a fantastic, fantastic piece of hardware. Now, the UXG Lite, I don't know if I said Mini or Pro earlier, but this is the UXG Lite. So let's take it out of the box and we'll physically compare it to our USG 3. So the packaging is very simple. We'll go ahead and get this opened up. There's a QR code there that you can scan if you want to get to the QSG and all that good stuff. Open it up. I am digging the simplified packaging. Here is the UXG, very sleek looking. What else do we have in the box? Cardboard divider. We have the power brick, which is USB-C, and then underneath this, there's some more information here. It was glued into the bottom of the box. I am glad to see not a lot of packaging with this. This is not a Ubiquiti specific thing, but all vendors, I think, need to start being a little cognizant of how much packaging that we're sending with all this gear. So we'll get our plastic off of our power brick for the UXG, and we'll take, there is a plastic cover on the UXG Lite, and this is a good looking device. If you can see this here, got the U on top, serial number, all that stuff on the bottom. On the back, we've got one WAN port, one LAN port, and then power and a reset button. Very, very sleek device. So I just happen to have, by the way, I do have USGs. So here's a USG 3, which we could say that this is the direct replacement for, and there is a size comparison. And Ubiquiti says this has 10 times the horsepower of this. So you can see the size. This thing's just about, it's not that much bigger than the square right in the middle of the USG 3. I've still got tons of these out there. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to uplink the UXG to a switch that I've got over here to get its internet feed, and then we're going to plug it into the Enterprise switch as well as the access point and the CloudKey. So stay tuned. I'm going to get that all hooked up, and we'll see what it looks like. All right, so I've got everything plugged in. Let me see if I can show you this without dropping it. I need to get some overhead cameras. But we've got our 8-port Enterprise switch. We've got our USG uplinked. I'm getting about 400 megabits out to the internet tonight. But this is uplinked to a switch. Then it's plugged into port 1. our CloudKey Gen2 is plugged into port 2, and then port 8 is our switch over here. Or I'm sorry, our access point. The U6 Enterprise, and everything is has an LED status of white and is waiting for adoption. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my PC over. We're going to fire up a web browser. We're going to log into the CloudKey, and we're going to start configuring this, and we'll talk through it as we do it. All right, so here we are. The IP address of my CloudKey Gen2 is 192.168.1.183 for now. I got that from looking at the LED LCD screen on the front. So let's go ahead and set up the CloudKey Gen2. So we're going to call this UniFi with, it doesn't like spaces, so UniFi with UXG Lite. And we're going to agree to the terms of service. And so I can proceed without an account, or I can bind this to my UI.com account. Now, the major advantage of binding this to your UI.com account is you can get to it from anywhere if you enable the remote access, and having bound this to UI.com, it is going to enable you to have multi-factor authentication on the device. And that is, in my opinion, hugely important, should be done. So you could create without, or you could proceed without an account. You could create an account if you don't have one. I'm going to go ahead and bind this to my UI.com account. So I've got MFA, but we can still access it by the local IP. So I'm going to go ahead and put my information in here and sign in. Okay, you can see that it is now asking for my MFA code, which I'm going to put in here. Okay, so that last screen, the reason I paused that is because I own several devices, and so what it did is anything that had a backup, it presented it to me with had a network application backup. It presented it to me as though hey, do you want to restore this? And I did not, and I didn't need you to see some of those console names because I do manage consoles for other people, so I like a little bit of privacy there. So it is reloaded. We'll go ahead and proceed now. And it's automatically updating. So I did not do that. It started this update. So, and this is probably several versions behind, if I had to guess. So I'm going to go ahead and let this thing update. As soon as it's done, we will be right back. Okay, so we updated, we rebooted, and we got a different IP address. We're going to end up putting a static IP on this here shortly. But let's go ahead and get signed back in. All right, it is once again asking me for my MFA. So we'll go ahead and do that. And you'll notice I'm still talking to this on the local IP address. And I have MFA. That's because I have it bound to my Ubiquiti account. So we can see here it's called UniFi with UXG Lite. Okay, by default it wants to auto update UniFi OS in the applications. I'm going to disable that. I don't let that happen. We usually watch the community, do some testing, things like that. So the version of network that is on here right now is 7.4.162. So a little bit of an older version. But as you can see, if I come in here, even on a 7.4 version, I can still adopt all of these devices. I saw somewhere that someone said you had to be on the 8.0 branch for this. Absolutely not true. You can see that, like I said, we are on 7.4.162, and we could adopt these devices. However, I am going to go ahead and update to the 8.0.7 release. So we'll go ahead and do that. We're going to use the new interface for most of these things. So I'm going to let this update. And while we're doing that, let's take a look. So we've got our admins, we've got our UniFi devices, nothing is adopted yet. We've got our console settings here, so it's going to automatically back up to Ubiquiti once a week. We're in the Chicago Central time zone. I can turn that screen down, put it in night mode, so it turns the screen off at 10 p.m., turns it back on at 8 a.m. I do have remote access enabled. I am not sending analytics and improvements to Ubiquiti, and I do not have SSH enabled for the CloudKey. I don't have any reason to do that yet. Now, if I was going to, you know, do a captive portal or something on here, I would probably do that. If I'm going to access this with a fully qualified domain name and I'm in an environment where I'm going to have auditors come in, I'm going to put it as an SSL certificate, TLS certificate, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put that on there, and I'm going to actually get to this by the FQDN. Auditors hate self-signed certificates, and you know, good reason. So we got our map, we've got our About This console, so we can see everything that's going on here, and let's see where we're at with our update. So this thing is still updating, and I'm going to let it update, and we'll be right back. All right, so our update is now complete. So we're going to go ahead and launch network, and then we're going to go in and right now it doesn't see any devices, so we've just got this access point or the Wi-Fi version only. But I want to go in, and I'm going to turn this on to the new. Let's see here. Oh, by the way, we are going to say that we're a professional installer, and this says it is on the new interface. So we'll go ahead and apply that. Coming up with that Wi-Fi only one threw me off for just a second. All right, so we're going to go over here, and we are now going to go ahead and we are going to adopt all of our devices. So we're going to adopt the next gen gateway Lite, the U6 Enterprise, and we're going to adopt the switch. So we're going to let all these adopt real quick, and we will be right back. All right, you can see that our devices are now adopting, and our controller has changed. We have now we have the ports, the radios, the gateway. So as soon as the switch is done updating, it's updating to the latest firmware, we'll be ready to set our static IP addresses on our devices and then start setting things up. So we'll be right back as soon as this is done. All right, so everything is up to date and rebooted. So we have our CloudKey now shows up under UniFi devices. And of course, we got our next gen gateway, U6 Enterprise, and our Switch Enterprise 8 PoE. This is the first version that was released, not the latest version. So let's go ahead, and of course our gateway is going to be 1.1. We're going to make our switch 1.2, so we're going to click on that. We're going to come over here, we're going to go to settings, we're going to go to IP settings, and we're going to do static. We're going to make it 1.2. DNS, we'll just leave it set to the gateway, because we're going to let the gateway handle the DNS. Subnet mask will be 255.255. We almost slipped. Look at this. We keep slipping into like Hollywood style networking here. All right. Alternate DNS. We'll just put Cloudflare there. Our gateway is 192.168, 1.1, and DNS suffix. We'll leave that. We'll just leave that one blank for now. And this is the only switch that we've got. So we can leave the priority. We don't need to adjust spanning tree at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those changes. So that's going to update the IP address of the switch. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to update the IP address of the access point. So we'll go into settings here and we'll scroll down to IP settings and we're going to do static and we're going to make this one 1.3 and we're going to fill out that same information. And we'll go ahead and apply that. And then I'd really like my cloud key to be 1.4. Now, we can accomplish this a couple different ways. We can do, fixed IP address here. Or we can go back into the console settings, scroll down, and set a static here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this one, should be 1.4, I believe is what I said. If you screw this up and you overlap an IP, then you're going to be in trouble. But I've got 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and primary DNS is going to be 190. We keep going to Hollywood here, .168.1.1, and then we'll do Cloudflare as our secondary. We're going to go ahead and apply changes, and we are going to lose access to this on the 192.168.1.185 as soon as this change takes effect. So I'm looking at the front of it to see if it's done, and it's done. So we will go to 1.4. And hopefully it'll let us back in. Yep, we got to sign back in. I'm going to sign back in. We'll be right back. All right, so we are logging back in on the new IP address, and we're going to go ahead and head on over to network. And our IP changed, so our Zoom settings changed here a little bit. All right, so by default, we can see that we've got some traffic identification going on. If you're not familiar with the 8.0 release, we've got our topology map. Pretty nice, up to date here. We see all of our UniFi devices and everything is readopting over to the new IP address. It's in the same network, so we don't have to do any informs or anything like that. It just finds it. It's UniFi magic, right? We got our client view. This is my desktop, and you can see that I am plugged in at 2.5 gig. In fact, the adapter that I'm using is a 2.5 and 5 gig adapter. So I am negotiated at 2.5 gig. Here is all of the switch ports, the ports that we can configure. Or this is, this is our overview. Pretty nice. I like the colors, very soothing. Here's our insights. We can drop this down. We can say, just show us the gateway, just show us the switch, or we can do all. And of course, here's that VLAN overview that I did some video on last week. Now, here are the radios, and you can see this is an enterprise, so it's got 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and a 6 gigahertz. So this is, Wi-Fi 6E. We've got our coverage. We don't have anything created yet. We're just we're just flipping through here to see what we've got going on. It already did an environment scan here, and so we can see we've got some stuff happening over there. And then I haven't run any speed tests. Here's our gateway, our gateway stuff by default. You can see we are capturing traffic. We are identifying traffic. Here's the filtering. Here's the geo. Like I said, none of this is set up yet. Of course, we've got our system logs. We're just doing just a quick overview. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to create a Wi-Fi called UniFi UXG. And this will be our private Wi-Fi. And I'm just making it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. We're going to come down here. We'll take a look at this. We're going to go ahead and use all 3 bands. We're not going to do band steering. We're not going to hide the Wi-Fi name. We're not going to do isolation because we want these devices to be able to see each other. It is going to be WPA 3 and the scheduler is off. So I'm going to go ahead and add that Wi-Fi network so you can see that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to add 2 networks to this. We are going to add an IoT network and a guest network. Now technically we could probably go ahead and use the same network, but we're going to separate them. So real quick, I don't want this thing to auto scale, so I want this to always say stay a /24. And then we've got some options under here. We could do isolation, content filtering. We are not going to do any content filtering at the moment. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new VLAN. And we're going to call this IoT. And the gateway for this is going to be the UniFi Next Gen Gateway Lite. And we are not going to let it auto scale. And we're going to leave it 192.168.2, VLAN of 2. And we are going to go ahead and isolate this network. We'll go ahead and add this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add one more, and we're going to call this guest. We're going to uncheck auto scale. We're going to turn on isolation. Now, if you want to do the content filtering, you can totally do it. We typically do it through DNS. Now, I am going to create one more. Since we got a 2.5 gig switch here, if we had some servers that had NICs that were capable of negotiating that 2.5, along with the access point that can do 2.5 gigabits of throughput. And we know that our gateway can only do 1 gig, so we don't want to, send that traffic through there. What we can do is we can create a new VLAN, and we can call this servers. And we can make the switch Enterprise 8 the router, because it's going to be able to switch and move those packets faster than the gateway, right? So we can do this, and we don't need to isolate it because that's going to be our servers. So we'll add that. So this is looking good so far. All right, so let's go back to our Wi-Fi. We're going to create another new one. We're going to call this UXG Lite IoT. We're going to give it a password of 1122334455 blah, 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 blah. All right, network is going to be IoT. Down here, so we don't necessarily have to turn on the hotspot portal. If we do turn on the hotspot portal, then we want to get an SSL certificate. We want to do all kinds of things. and this is IoT, so it doesn't need it. But we do want to turn on the device isolation. So we want to do it here, and we're going to do it on the wired network. At this time, I don't think I need anything else. If it becomes problematic, we'll put a Wi-Fi speed limit on, but we're probably going to put our TVs and stuff like that in here. So we've got our UXG Lite. In fact, I'm going to edit that though, so it says UniFi UXG-Lite-IoT. And of course, you can name these whatever you want. Now I'm going to create that guest network. It's going to be UniFi-UXG-Lite-guest. And just creating a simple password. This is going to be guest, manual, and we're going to turn on that client device isolation, and then we're going to turn on some Wi-Fi speed limits, but by default we don't have any. So we're going to create a new profile, and we're going to call this guest. And what we're going to do is we're going to give them 5 megabits down and 2 megabits up. So that is there. Let's see here. We'll add this, then we'll go back and we'll apply that speed limit. We also want the guests to have Wi-Fi 6. Where did our Wi-Fi speed limit go? Drop that down. Save that? I thought I did. That was weird. Let's refresh this and see what the deal is there. There it is. And so now each one of those guests is only going to be able to use 5 megabits down, 2 megabits up. More than enough if you're on a phone, an iPad, whatever, to get high def stream. So that is all set up. So now what we've got is we've got our main network. We'll just kind of recap this, which is our default. We've got a servers, which is actually the layer 3 switch is actually handling that traffic. And then we've got an IoT and a guest, which are segregated from everything else completely. All right. On the internet here, I don't really need to set anything else up. I'm not going to do any fair queues, smart queues, or anything like that. I'm not running voice on this network. If we were, we would probably set those up at a minimum. That's really the best quality of service that we've got here. So, all right, what else are we going to do? So by default, it looks like teleport is enabled, and I'm going to disable that. And I'm going to go over to VPN server, and do I want to use WireGuard or OpenVPN? That's a tough one. So I think I'm going to use OpenVPN. Now it's going to give us this warning that our WAN IP is dynamically assigned. It is also an RFC address. So in this case, we would have to have dynamic DNS, or we should have dynamic DNS set up. We would actually use dynamic DNS in the host as the host name inside the file, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So we're just going to leave this called OpenVPN. You can also use an alternate address for the clients. So instead of us having to edit that file, we can just say uxg-lab.williehowe.com. If we had the FQDN set up. We're going to create a new user. We're just going to call this Willie. We're going to create the user. And we are going to manually set this. We'll drop this. We only need 5 usable VPNs. So we're going to go ahead and add this. And then it's going to go ahead and generate the config file, and we can download it, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so it is made the configuration file. We're going to go ahead and download it and open it up real quick. All right, and this is what the file looks like. It's got the certificates and the keys embedded in it. And you can see that it put our FQDN in here. And then by default, all traffic is going to flow through this. So it's not a split tunnel, but you would just import this into whatever OpenVPN client you're running, and you're going to be able to connect directly to this this network. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is security. So by default, it looks like we've got some device identification going on, traffic identification. So we are going to block some countries by default. So by default, I want to block China and Russia. So we're going to block those. Now I can do ad blocking. Sometimes things get a little messed up when that happens. So if you want to do ad blocking, go ahead, have fun with that. If you're interested in an internal honeypot, what that does is it sets up a host, and any of the traffic, any of the things talking to that gets logged, and you can take a look at that. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to turn on suspicious activity. We're going to turn it on all the networks. I want to do a notify and block, and we're going to do high. We're going to turn on the dark web blocker, block malicious IPs. We're going to go ahead and click apply on that. We don't need any traffic rules or port forwarding or firewall rules at the moment. Everything should be good there. Once again, I don't think we need any traffic routes, static routes. Here's our profiles. So if we were doing voice or things like that, we could come in here, set up special profiles for that. Here's our Wi-Fi speed limit. Remember, we set that guest. We can set up different radius. We can set up IP groups for firewall rules. But by default, we're in a really good spot with this. So we set up our networks. We set up the security between the networks. Now, the only thing that we might want to change is if we've got a server and we want it to be on the server VLAN, what we want to do is we want to come into Port Manager, and we're going to click on port 3. We'll say we're going to put a server here, right? So we're going to call this server. Native VLAN, we're going to drop this down. It's going to be the server's network, and we could block all, allow all, or custom. So are we going to allow other tagged traffic? Basically, are we turning this thing into a trunk? And we could come in here and say block all, and then it's not going to tag. It's just going to be the native VLAN on that port. So we can click apply there. You can also see that our U6 Enterprise is connected at 2.5 gig. Come over to our insights. We can take a look here. Here's our VLAN. So now that we've got all these different VLANs, we can see exactly what's going on. We can click those ports. It'll drill down into that. So port 3, here's the port 3 setup. That's it. So this should get you up and going with a small office, a home office. If you've got any questions about this, let me know. I know it's a lot, and we didn't get real deep into the weeds of the explanation of why we do the things that we do, but let me know if you've got those questions. And if you want to see more long-form videos like this, let me know down in the comments. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, please comment and share. And, if you want to see other testing with this, I'm not going to tear this down. Let me know what you want to see down below. Follow me on Twitter and TikTok. Those links are down below, along with affiliate links and a Patreon link to support the channel. And if you need IT consulting, you'd like to get your network set up, tuned up, your voice over IP, your storage, your security, all those things, head on over to williehowe.com, fill out the contact form and submit it, and someone will be in touch with you as soon as possible. Once again, I'm Willie. Let me know if you like these long-form videos. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.